Heaven come down. It's the holiness of God, and only those who are fully alive can be in the tabernacle or the temple, because then you're in the presence of God. You are in holy space. We also mentioned last week that this man in Joshua 5 and in Exodus 3 says you are on holy ground when you're around him. So think about this. Yeshua is an extension of the temple or the tabernacle. Ergo, wherever he goes, people must be healed because they're now in temple precincts. So what happens? Every time he gets around somebody who's sick, or every time he gets around somebody who's dead, they either get healed or they become raised, because they're now in his presence, they're now in temple residence. Yeah.
Not only alive, but they had to be whole.
Whole, that's nature. Yeah.
I.e., I think that's why Daniel stayed in Babylon, because he was a eunuch.
Yeah.
And he knew he could not go in the temple.
Yeah. So, if you have any defect, any physical defect, one cannot go into the temple because you are not whole. So, all the individuals that we find healed in the apostolic scriptures by Yeshua are individuals who, by definition, could not enter into the sanctum. They could not enter into the temple. Well, that seems unfair. Well, it's not, because this is the place where the holiness of God dwells, and he is fully alive. So this is why, if blood flow, if blood levels were down, if life fluid levels were down, you had to wait until they were back to their normal, full capacity, then you could go in. This is the idea of the immersion. Why did you take an immersion? So that you symbolically, by the way, immersion. What's immersion? It's symbolically going in dead, going into the waters, and then coming back out alive. Clean. Purified.
Because those are living waters. They're all fed by springs.
Absolutely. It has to be living water.
Right. It can't be stagnant.
Precisely. Ma'im Kayim. It has to be, I was just thinking about this, it has to be, the reason why the Sea of Galilee works, which is technically a lake, is because it's river fed.
Yeah.
It's river fed, and it empties into a river, so for that reason it's moving.
Right.
You can't have a landlocked lake.
Right.
You can have a waterfall, you can have a river, you can have a lake that's river fed, you can have an ocean, you just cannot have a pool.
Right.
Okay, so the mikveh has to be living water to say, you're going in dead, that is with disease about you maybe, or with just contact with this world. Just any contact with this world, you come in, you come out alive. You walk in, you walk out, living water. There was a question, sorry. Yes?
I was going to say, is that why they have it as an important part of the rabbinic conversion process?
Yes, I think very much so. Now, here's what's interesting. Rabbinic conversion took two things. They said you had to have ritual immersion and then circumcision for guys. Whereas Yeshua, interestingly enough, says just immersion. Matthew 28, he says it's just immersion. As you're baptizing them in the name singular, Father, Son, Spirit.
And that pool, or the mikvah is symbolic of a womb, right?
Yes.
So living
amniotic fluid. It's almost like you're going back into the amniotic fluids again. Right. You're going back into the water. You came as you were born out of water. You go back into water. Right. Yeah.
So can we just wipe out this idea in our culture of going into some bathtub in a building and immersing?
Yeah, that's not an immersion.
Can we just wipe that out and start over?
Yeah, that's not an immersion. You can do immersions only in living water. So if it's fed by rain and it's moving, that's the picture. He talks about this repeatedly. They say it has to be living water, because the idea is that the water has to be metaphorically moving to carry away the perceived uncleanness.
And it's Yeshua. It's not some man-made thing.
Right. Absolutely. But if you go to the Temple Mount today, there are, on the southern steps excavation to the temple, there are mikvaot, ritual immersion pools, all at the front of the entrance to the temple. Before one even thought about going into the temple, you would do an immersion as a way of going from being unclean By the way, you're unclean if you walk. Bless you. You're unclean if you walk on dirt. You're unclean if you walk on dirt. You're unclean if you walk near a corpse. You're unclean if you touch a carcass of an animal. So nobody would ever take the risk of going into the presence of God without doing some type of immersion first. Now, listen to what happens. Verse 21, go back to Luke chapter 2. And when the 8 days were completed for the circumcision of the child, his name was called Yeshua. Okay? Now look at verse 22. When the days of her purification, according to the Torah of Moses, were completed. She had to do 7 and then 33. Okay? So that's according to Leviticus 12. It says, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. As it is written in the Torah of the Lord, now look at this. Every male who opens the womb shall be called holy to the Lord. I wanted some people to look up some text for me. Somebody look up Exodus chapter 13, verses 11 through 16. Exodus chapter 13, verses 11 through 16. Buddy? And then somebody look up Numbers chapter 3, verses 38 to 51. Numbers chapter 3, verses 38 to 51. And then I need one person to read Exodus chapter 13, verse 2. All right, Jenny, you read Exodus 13, 2 in just a moment. So let's go to Exodus 13, 11 through 16. Betty.
When the Lord brings you into the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to you and your fathers, and shall give it to you, you shall set apart to the Lord all that first opens the womb. All the firstborn of your animals that are males shall be the Lord's. Every firstborn of a donkey you shall redeem with a lamb, or if you will not redeem it, you shall break its neck. Every firstborn of man among your sons you shall redeem. And when in time to come your son asks you, what does this mean? You shall say to him, by a strong hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt, from the house of slavery. How far away?
Verse 16.
For when Pharaoh stubbornly refused to let us go, the Lord killed all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of animals. Therefore I sacrifice to the Lord all the males that first open the womb, but all the firstborn of my sons I redeem. It shall be as a mark on your hand or frontlets between your eyes. For by a strong hand the Lord brought us out of Egypt.
Okay.
That reminds me of Revelation, where they put the mark on us.
Absolutely.
In those two places.
Yeah, it's a counterfeit.
Yeah.
So let me read these. Let me read these texts, then we'll come up with some questions. Hold on. So go ahead with Numbers chapter 3, verse 30 to 51.
Those who camp in front of the tabernacle on the east, in front of the tent of meeting for the sunrise, when Moshe, Aharon, and his sons were in charge of the holy place, they carried out the responsibility on behalf of the people of Israel and anyone else who involved himself with the death. The total number of Levi'im whom Moshe and Aharon counted by their clans, all the males a month old and over, was 22,000. Adonai said to Moshe, register all the firstborn males of the people of Israel a month old and over, and determine how many there are. Then you are to take the Levi'im for me, Adonai, in place of all the firstborn among the people of Israel, and the cattle of the Levi'im in place of the firstborn of the cattle belonging to the people of Israel. Moshe counted as Adonai had ordered him all the firstborn among the people of Israel. The total number of firstborn males registered a month old and over of those who were counted was 22,273. Adonai said to Moshe, take the Levi'im in place of all the firstborn among the people of Israel, and the cattle of the Levi'im in place of the cattle. Their cattle. The Levi'im are to belong to me, Adonai. Since there were 273 more firstborn males of Israel than male Levi'im, in order to redeem them, you are to take 5 shekels, 2 ounces. For each of these, use the sanctuary shekel, which is equal to 20 gerahs. Give the redemption money for these extra people to Aharon and his sons. Moshe took the redemption money from those who were over and above those redeemed by the Levi'im. The amount of money he took from the firstborn of the people of Israel was 1,365 shekels, using the sanctuary shekel. Moshe gave the redemption money to Aharon and his sons, in keeping with what Adonai had said, and Adonai had ordered Moshe.
Okay, and then Jenny, read Exodus chapter 13, verse 2.
Set apart to me every firstborn, the one opening the womb among the sons of Israel, among men and among the livestock. They shall be mine.
Okay. Now, question here and question there. Go ahead.
Going back to the mikvah, mikvah was to wash you to enter the temple, not to be associated with baptism.
Correct.
Baptism, you are dying yourself as you come back up, a new creation in Christ. The water and baptism could not wash away your sins. Only the blood.
Right.
Paul
Absolutely.
explained this in such a manner as to say that, for example, Yeshua, when he came down to John,
Right.
he went in the water as a carpenter. He'd come out of the water as the Messiah, the Lamb. John said, "Behold, the Lamb."
Right.
He started his 70-week ministry right then.
Yeah. And I want to be clear that immersion is never, the concept of immersion was never about never about salvation. It was always about those who already were believers, and it was the idea of going into the temple. So it was never meant to be anything related to one's salvation. It was a sanctification process to say you have to be clean to go in. Bill, you had a question?
Yeah, all the firstborn males.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Correct.
If he's the fourth one down the row, it's still the firstborn male.
Correct. Doesn't matter. There are 3 daughters and the fourth was a son. That one has to be redeemed.
Okay.
So, and notice what happens in the Numbers text. They take the Levites, as God says, "I'll take the firstborn of the Levites." And then what happens is they do the calculation and realize they've got a little bit more from the other nations than they do from the Levites. So they say, okay, we'll have to pay those in the shekels of the sanctuary, 5 shekels of silver. Okay, so that money has to be paid. Okay, so this is but this is for the firstborn of both male. Now, if it's an animal, you either sacrifice a lamb for it, or you break the neck. Which, by the way, if you break the neck, pretty much renders it useless. If you're not going to offer the sacrifice. Yeah, question?
I was going to say something back to the 8th day. The number 8 signifies completion.
Absolutely.
Okay, and
Yeah.
so if you think about the 7 days with the first part of purification, but also on the 8th day is when vitamin K is produced.
Yes.
And there's the least amount of bleeding.
Right. Yeah, we mentioned that in the past too. Yeah. So it's, but I think this eighth day is a picture of the world to come. So it's, if you look at the festival of Sukkot, tabernacling with God, we have the 7 days, and then we have Shemini 8 Atzer, the 8th that hangs on. And so this 8th number, the number 8 becomes, 7 becomes completion, and then 8 is as like and beyond.
New beginning.
New beginning. This is kind of and beyond. Infinity and beyond. It's like and beyond. It's like just way out there.
Well,
You can't come.
and 8 turned on its side is that
And never ending.
is never
It's
ending.
never
Yeah,
ending.
the Mobius.
Now look what happens. So she does this. So my point is this. They circumcise the child in verse 21, Yeshua. Verse 22, they offer every male who opens the womb, they offer the sacrifice. Now look at this. Look at verse 24. And to offer a sacrifice according to what is in the Torah of the Lord, a pair of turtle doves or 2 young pigeons. Now here's the beauty of the Torah, and one of the things that gets left out, I think sometimes. Their Torah had gradations for people if you were upper class, middle class, or lower class, as far as your economic status. The fact that Miriam is bringing 2 turtle doves and 2 young pigeons demonstrates that she is on the lower economic rung. Yeah.
Which kind of flies in the face of the popular scene of the wise men coming into the manger at the very birth of Christ.
Right.
If they'd have had all that gold,
Right.
she sure would have brought the 2 turtle doves.
Right. So this is when he's a child.
I
So
thought that wise men came a little later.
they came later. Yeah, the wise come later. Yeah, this is the birth. The wise come later. Now here's what's interesting. So go back to Leviticus 12. Got it right here. Look at Leviticus 12. It says, verse 6, when the days of her purification are fulfilled, whether for a son or daughter, she shall bring to the priest a lamb for the first year as a burnt offering, and a young pigeon or a turtle dove as a sin offering. I want to change that. To the door of the tabernacle meeting. Okay, now, this, they translate it as a sin offering in verse 6. It's the word katat. And we can find other places where this idea of katat doesn't mean sin. And I think that's a bad translation. It's a purification offering.